Hey everyone, my name is Wedge. As we move on with our Commander 2014 series, today we discuss a commander that's perfect to build around, a deck with the potential for fun and a ton of artifacts. Built from scratch is appropriately named as it's a great foundation for a powerful strategy. Daretti Scrap Savant is the cheapest commander at 4 mana. Since he's likely a build-around commander, he has to be aggressively costed in order to be functional. 4 mana is reasonable when you know that he'll immediately do something unlike some other commander options. 3 starting loyalty is also fair at 4 mana. He'll likely hold up in the early game and get some abilities off. The first ability allows you to discard up to 2 cards in order to draw that many cards. This is pretty strong as it enables the deck strategy. You need to get stuff in the graveyard to abuse Daretti, and he fortunately does it himself. Adding 2 loyalty is also nothing to scoff at. It would be reasonable to expect that this ability would only add 1 loyalty. For 2 loyalty, you can sacrifice an artifact in order to return an artifact from your graveyard to play. This one-shot trash for treasure or goblin welder effect is powerful with the right pieces. There are countless artifacts that have relevant enter or leave the battlefield effects that can synergize with Daretti. The strength of your synergy is likely directly related to how often you can activate the middle ability profitably. The ultimate ability creates a replacement effect that returns an artifact to play at the next end step when it hits the graveyard. When your deck is trying to put as many artifacts in the graveyard as possible, putting them back into play seems good, right? This will probably win you the game. If you can manage to get your artifacts back at the end of each turn, it's a gross ability. The deck is relatively straightforward. Spend the first few turns trying to fill your graveyard and battlefield with artifacts while getting Daretti out as soon as possible. Then use the utility of your commander and artifacts to slowly pull ahead. Once the time is right, power out a dragon or unstoppable artifact to close out the game. Of all the decks printed, this is probably the most synergistic. With nearly 40 artifacts in the deck, you have plenty of ways to abuse Daretti and the support cards. From support options like Trading Post and Pilgrim's Eye to win conditions like Wormcoil Engine and Bosch Iron Golem, you have artifacts for a wide variety of situations. The deck packs 6 rocks, a medallion, and Cage Sun to help generate extra mana. The mana sources pull double duty in this deck, accelerating your mana and giving you artifacts to sacrifice. I wouldn't sacrifice Cage Sun unless you absolutely have to. Mycosynth Wellspring and Wayfarer's Bauble can let you dig for lands. Card draw is a commodity in red and surprisingly enough comes from most of your artifacts. Ichor Wellspring, Panic Spellbomb, and Solemn Simulacrum can draw cards when they die, while Jalum Tome can give you multiple draws and fill your graveyard. There are plenty of utility artifacts included in the deck that aren't meant to be sacrificed. Junk Diver and Mer Retriever can get lost artifacts. Mer Sire is 2 creatures and Cathodian can turn into 3 mana. Bottle Gnomes is both an early blocker and later will give you some life. The deck packs some removal in the forms of damage like Flametongue Kavu or Spite Bellow, sweepers like Blasphemous Act, Incite Rebellions or Magma Quake, and targeted removal spells such as Spine of Ishsa, Unstable Obelisk, or Chaos Warp. The deck can be quite formidable as you need time to set up your artifacts and keep creatures away from Daretti. With enough setup, you'll be able to get out your Wormcoil Engine and punch people's faces in. If that isn't enough, go a step higher and roll out Pentavis, Mer Battlesphere, or Steel Hellkite. If you're having trouble setting up your artifacts, then dragons are the way to go. Warmonger Hellkite and Tyrant's Familiar are just 2 of the 5 dragons in the deck that can take over the game. While the strategy does rely on some elaborate setups in order to succeed, you have some big standalone creatures to get the job done when needed. Trying to get the most out of your artifacts and can't get Daretti going? Goblin Welder is the same as the middle ability but on a creature. New card Felon of the Third Path makes copies of an artifact in your graveyard and also can be built around. The most interesting card in the deck? Scrap Mastery. As we discussed in a previous video, Living Death can be a pseudo win condition in the right scenario. Scrap Mastery can easily have the same raw power with the right artifacts in the yard and can also sweep out your opponent's artifacts at the same time. You want to get cards into your graveyard as fast as you can. Draw 7 effects such as Wheel of Fortune or Wheel of Fate are a good way to both fill your graveyard and also dig for cards you need. Another card that does the same and is also an artifact is Memory Jar. Memory Jar is a little different in that you set aside your hand instead of discarding it and then discard the cards you draw at the end of turn. Your opponents likely won't be able to use any of the cards they draw, which makes Memory Jar slightly better. Tutor effects and draw effects are a little difficult to find in red. Gamble is the rare tutor in red that is remotely playable. For a single red, you search your library for a card and then put it in your hand, but then you have to discard a card at random. It fills your graveyard and will probably get the card that you need, or it gets it in your graveyard. Hopefully either is good. Howling Mine and Fond of Mythos, as well as Temple Bell, can provide both extra draw and artifacts to sacrifice. But be warned that your opponents also get extra cards off of any of these, so you have to find the right time to drop them to get maximum benefit. Krark Clan Ironworks was a card that had potential when it first came out but never really saw play. Turning your spare artifacts into 2 mana can be just enough to power out a Myr Battlesphere, Spine of Ishtar, or something bigger. Bladesteel Colossus sounds like a good start for big dumb artifacts to include. If you decided to run a ton of creatures, Ashnod's Altar or Phyrexian Altar is another way to sacrifice them to the big dumb Infect Colossus in the sky. Mindslaver is one of the stronger artifacts in the format, allowing you to take a player's entire turn. Usually taking one player's turn is enough to sway the game in your favor or even win it on the spot. Mindslaver is the perfect card for Daretti. It enables you to get multiple activations easily. With enough artifacts and an active Daretti, you can chain a few extra turns with one Mindslaver. Want to deal a little extra damage here and there? Try Furnace Celebration. This enchantment seems harmless, but with open mana and some permanents to sacrifice, you have some damage to literally throw around. It may not seem like much, but all it takes is a few activations for some significant damage. Financially, Build from Scratch is likely the most expensive of the 5 decks value-wise. Daretti and Dualcaster Mage both sit around $15 right now, while Wormcoil Engine around $9. This is probably the only deck you could buy now and easily get the value back. Even with that, it's still pretty fun to play with it. There are some interesting reprints as well, most notably Simulacrum, Cage Sun, and Goblin Welder. If Dualcaster Mage ends up being the next big thing, don't expect these to stay on the shelves for long. It's a fair warning. Built from Scratch is a fun deck with some extreme potential depending on what path you take with it. When it's all said and done, Daretti may turn out to be the MVP of the entire set. That's the power of a Goblin Welder on a stick. Just saying. What do you all think about the Red Commander 2014 strategy? As far as synergy goes, beyond impressed with this one. The whole deck has a clear plan and it executes it really well. I don't usually play red, but let's be honest. Goblin Planeswalker plus Feldon? Come on. Let me know what you think in the comments below and any additions you might make to this strategy. As always, subscribe for the latest and most reliable Magic the Gathering information you could ever need. This is the Mana Source. I'm Wedge. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.